Julie Larson is a licensed clinical social worker who has spent her career working in oncology supportive care. She has a vibrant private practice, working primarily with individuals under the age of 40 facing an unexpected medical diagnosis. Julie is a frequent speaker and educator to both survivor and professional audiences on the impact of a serious illness at a young age, living fully after a cancer diagnosis, and resilience. Julie's clinical work integrates cognitive behavioral, mindfulness, and narrative therapies. Working alongside her clients and audiences, she helps people identify inherent strengths and cultivate additional resilient behaviors to build confidence in the ability to navigate hardship. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julie Larson.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and I appreciate your patience as we were kind of figuring out how to get me in here. So welcome to this group, and I am glad that you are with me today. I hope you've been having a great conference. I am going to begin and just start talking with you about the emotional impact of a cancer diagnosis. And I don't know where this finds each of you today. Some of you might be in the midst of treatment, newly diagnosed and actively going through treatment. Others of you might be post-treatment survivors, and others of you might be sitting and listening with us today as caregivers. And so wherever this message finds you, I want you to just take a seat back, lean back in your chair, get a piece of paper and a pen, take some notes, and really think about you, because I think that in so many ways we can read about cancer survivorship, we can read about fear of recurrence, we can read about mindfulness and all of these other things. But until you do the work of really listening in and reflecting and thinking a bit about how you do this cancer diagnosis and this cancer story, then you're always reaching outside of yourself. And so I want you to think about, as I begin speaking, think about yourself, where this finds you. I'm going to kind of begin here to share my screen. Give me a quick moment to get there. Bear with me. Here we are, and I'm going to turn this into a slideshow, which I had not done yet. Okay, can you see my screen? I hope you can all see my screen. Okay, this is the impact, the emotional impact of a cancer diagnosis. So where are we going to begin? This is a bit of a roadmap for the next 45 minutes of our time together. But how do I recognize the emotional impact of my cancer diagnosis? Like, I'm hearing that this is normal. How do I recognize that for me? What does that look like? What triggers my stress? What are those triggers? How do you begin to identify those for yourself? How can I care for myself? The big question of the day. How do I do this? How do I take care of myself? And how can I build up my personal resilience? Okay, that's where we're going. Let's get started. So first of all, and I'm going to kind of just do a little basics 101. Some of this you might already know, that's fine. Other things might be new to you, but stress is your body's way of responding to a demand, right? And goodness, our world has been in a state of stress for quite some time in many different ways. And our body has a physical, emotional, and a mental response to stress. So when you think about how stress shows up for you, it's probably going to show up in all of those ways. There are different types of stress, and the word stress gets a bad rap because not all stress is quote unquote bad. In fact, if you think about if you've ever had to take an exam, if you've ever been on a first date, if you've ever had to finish a race of some kind or an endurance feat, then you know that there is a certain brand of stress that's really good for us, right? That helps us to strive and to reach and to meet a challenge. Stress is also subjective, right? So what's totally stressing me out may not bother somebody else at all, and vice versa. And when I really think about that piece of stress, if you think about it, that a lot of times is what leads to trickiness or complications within relationships sometimes, when we feel misunderstood or when others don't understand how significant something might feel for you. When people walk into my office, I am an oncology therapist. I've worked with people diagnosed with cancer or impacted by a cancer diagnosis my entire career. These are some of the things that they're telling me that they're feeling. They're feeling fear, they're feeling sadness, guilt, anger, emotional numbness. Like, I don't really know where I'm at right now. Uncertainty, worry, and pressure. And I watch as I begin to listen to them and I say, goodness, I'd be surprised if you weren't feeling all of those things, that their shoulders kind of go down just a little bit. That in some way, just knowing that those intense and heavy feelings that you're experiencing right now are normal and understandable is helpful. It just, I watch people in my office feel like, gosh, this wasn't me. This isn't who I was before diagnosis, but now, my goodness, there's so much guilt in me that I never wrestled with before. There's just a numbness, and I was never that way. And what used to be abnormal can feel, or what used to be, kind of seem abnormal is so normal, and that's disconcerting. So not that necessarily changes it completely, but sometimes just knowing that you're on the right track and that this is understandable is helpful to know. At the same time, many survivors, and I don't know if any of you would feel this way too, are also in a process of acknowledging their own personal strengths, kind of making discoveries about themselves, deepening relationships. We talk about complications in relationships, but cancer certainly also deepens relationships. Sometimes people sit in my office and they feel a unique brand of excitement for the future, like ready to dig in, ready to make changes, ready to care for themselves in new ways and set personal goals. And certainly a cancer diagnosis can fine tune and bring you a razor sharp focus and gratitude and appreciation for what is working in your life and what is surrounding you and how you're making it through. So I put this slide up not to in any way minimize or, kind of dismiss the slide before, but rather to just, paint the picture of how complex a cancer diagnosis is, that it's just a lot to be dealing with. And so when people come into my office, that's when I say, whoa, when you feel all of those complicated feelings, or maybe two feelings at the same time, that is a good sign that we need to stop and slow down. We need to kind of just begin to pay close attention to what's going on. So in my practice and when I'm working with people, and today with you, I'm going to talk about managing the mind, right? And what I mean when I say that is, how do you begin to cultivate a habit of checking in with yourself, of paying attention with purpose? And when I say that to people, they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, can you just name the feeling that you're having? I'm actually sitting in my office right now. I would get up and walk over to my chair and get it for you. But I have this feeling wheel in my office because I find that when I ask people, what are you feeling? For some people, it's really tricky to come up with enough vocabulary words. Like, we don't have enough feelings, so we don't have enough language. And so if you can kind of even begin to think about, how can I get very specific about what I'm feeling? I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling overwhelmed in fear. Or you might also be feeling irritable and impatient. You might also be feeling dread and lack of motivation, right? So the more specific we can get, it really gives us a lot of good information about what's going on for me and maybe also what I need. And I'm going to get to that a bit later. Similarly, when you're doing that habit, that new habit that I'm encouraging each of you to cultivate, of checking in, where are you feeling the stress in your body? Right? So our stress, like I said before, shows up physically too. Where is that showing up for you? And I'm going to talk more about that here in a second too. What am I doing that's helpful? Goodness, this walk is really helpful, and being outside or listening to music or doing something with my hands. I'm finding that that's keeping me busy, that's keeping me grounded, and that's really helpful for me right now. Or what am I doing that's not working so well for me? Goodness, holy cow, where did the last 20 minutes go? I've been in a spiral on my social media, or I've just been scrolling, and who knows where that last few minutes went. And I recognize that I'm feeling more tense and more anxiety. So when you begin to cultivate this habit of checking in, you can begin to pay attention to, hey, where am I moving and what choices am I making that are working or not working for me? Let's keep going. So remember how I said, grab that piece of paper and a pen? This is a moment when I would want you to kind of think about this for yourself, or just to reflect and just really, get in your own skin. Like I said, stress shows up for all of us across the board, mental, emotional, and physical. for everybody. But I guess I would say that when I sit in my office with my patients, I seem to notice that many of my clients kind of lean toward one or the other. So, you know, some of my clients are sitting there and their mind is busy, busy, busy brain, right? So they're thinking, thinking, thinking. And when I say to those clients, you know, tell me when you're thinking all of these things, how does it make you feel? Their response is right back in that lane of thinking, well, I think that if I get these answers, then I think that I will know more. And I think that if I were able to talk to my sister or talk to my spouse, then that would actually help. Or I think that if this person would stop doing this, it would be better. I think this, well, how does that make you feel? And it's very hard to grab onto or name what that feeling is. And similarly, they're maybe a little bit more out of touch with their body, right? So they're thinking, their mind is just moving and moving. That's a thinker. And the work with the thinker is to begin to have them tune into, grow that feeling word vocabulary, begin to name those feelings, and to begin to pay attention to what's going on with your body too, as a way of grounding yourself. Now, in some same way, the patients that come into my office who are lean a little bit more toward feeling is a little bit how their stress shows up. They're crying quite a bit. And those tears are just flooding my office, and the sadness and the overwhelm and the confusion and the loss. Or goodness, I've got some people that walk in and they're angry and mad and they're just really, really fired up. And when I say to those clients, gosh, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking that's making you feel so strongly. The feeling is just, I'm just feeling lost. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I just don't know. I can't. And it's very hard for them to tune in and to turn down the volume of that emotion and to begin to pay attention to what the movie is in their mind. What are you thinking about that's beginning to drive that feeling? And so so if you find that you're a feeler, like the feelings are all there, big and heavy and strong, then my work with that group of people is to begin to have you tune into what you're thinking. Because if in any way your thinking is distorted or a little bit out of line, then that's going to affect how you're feeling. So we have to pay attention there. And then we've got the people who feel in their body, right? That shows up in their body in a certain way. They feel a pit in their stomach, their shoulders are tight, they have headaches, they feel a fatigue, you know. So stress shows up for all of us in all three ways. But do you know, if we get into the business of really knowing you, are you really knowing you? Do you know how your stress shows up? Where is it? How are you? And when you know that, then you can begin to catch it and tend to it quicker. Triggers. Another place of self-awareness is triggers. And gosh darn it, if it isn't the case that oftentimes we don't know a trigger until we're triggered. But it's just information, it's learning, it's helping you to kind of put that in your bank and know that about yourself. But triggers can be all kinds of things. They can be certain people that make really awkward statements or say the wrong thing or want us to go there and make us teary or emotional, and we don't want to disclose certain people. It can be dates on the calendar. And beyond dates on the calendar, I often hear people talk to me about seasons, right? Gosh, as the leaves begin to change, it's reminding me of a year ago what was happening when I was just having symptoms and I was just going to the doctor for the first time. Or gosh, now that we're into the winter, I remember a year ago I was in bed and I was so sick. So just begin to pay attention. If you're feeling off, is there something in your environment that might be contributing to that? That would be a trigger. Hot topics. This could go on, and you all will maybe have your own hot topics. We're living in a week filled with hot topics, but hot topics can be all kinds of things related to your cancer diagnosis. Things that people have shared with me and therefore may resonate for you, or kind of you might feel familiar, are sometimes diet and exercise can be hot topics for people. When people start to share things about you should be eating this or you shouldn't be eating this or you should be exercising, you shouldn't, that can feel fragile, that can feel vulnerable for people sometimes. Sometimes faith can be vulnerable. You know, God doesn't give us anything we can't handle. And irregardless of what your faith is, that sometimes those statements, those cliched statements can be hot. The way in which you're supporting or talking to your children, that can be a hot topic. Asking questions about treatment plans. Gosh, my neighbor, she had the exact same diagnosis, but she had these treatments. I wonder why you didn't have those. Oh, those can also be hot topics. So That's kind of the beginning of figuring out and paying close attention to what are those things that people say that just spin me a little bit. And I need to become aware of that so that when it happens, I can tune in and I can help and calm myself. So whenever we are met with stress, whether that's a trigger or whether that is kind of heading into a scan anxiety, or heading into a new treatment, a doctor's appointment, a group of people that you haven't seen in a while, whenever we're headed into a stressful situation, we do this trigger fast evaluation. Are the demands of this situation, like what is this situation going to demand of me? And do I have the resources to do it? Can I do this? And the kind of that questioning is, how hard is this going to be? Do I have the skills? Do I have the emotional strength and courage? And is there anyone who can help me? And you may not even be aware of that, but probably if we really sat and talked about it, maybe that's part of what's in you whenever you feel this stress. How am I going to do this? Like, I don't know, do I have the capacity to do this? Do I have other people around me? Do I have the strength? Do I have the ability? So when we are stressed, I'm going to go through a couple different strategies with you today. So when you feel that, when you experience that, I'm going to give you a couple strategies. So write notes, take them, and see if any of these might work for you. There can be tools in your toolbox. Strategy 1 is work in your head. So we're going to go through this from head, feeling, body, but work in your head. So if your thinking is fast and your thinking is intrusive and your thinking is spinning, how can you begin to pay attention to that and address it? So can you turn your what ifs into other whats? So what if to what is? So if you're asking, what if this scan comes back and it's not good? What if what if I have a recurrence? What if I miss it? What if this fatigue never goes away? In that moment, what is? Just drop the reins and take inventory of your present. What do you know for sure? So what if the cancer has recurred? What if it's progressing? Okay, well, I know that my hair is growing back, so that's a sign of healing. I know that I have a different level of energy than I did 6 months ago, okay? I know that my last scan was good. I know that this, what do you know for sure? Can you lean on that? Can you hold that, right? What if to what else? So are there other possible truths? Gosh, I've got a pain in my side, in my shoulder. That is how I remember. That was one of the symptoms that I had that led me to my doctor. This definitely means this. Could it be something else? Is there any other possible truths? Come to think about it, I was raking leaves and maybe it's that. Or come to think about it, I was carrying that heavy bag and maybe it's that. So can you turn the lights on in the rest of the room and kind of see, okay, maybe it's this. I'm not going to completely minimize or take that off the table because that's feeling strongly to me, but could it also be some other things? What else? What if to then what? So sometimes this one really works for people. I've had clients in my office say, Julie, I'm trying the what is and I'm trying the what is, but my head is just arguing me all the time and keeps pulling me back. So sometimes it's helpful for some people just take the train of terribles, just go for it. And sometimes when we create a concrete plan for our worst case scenario, it serves to calm us. It serves to help us feel maybe a little bit more in control, and that it helps us to know that we have a strategy or we have a plan. So for an example, I have a client that's living in New York. She lives alone and she's a single parent. And she's very worried about COVID, right? What if I get it? And so we did all the other things. What is, what else, how are you doing? But what if to what then? Okay, what if you do? Then what do you do? Well, okay, I'm going to call my neighbor across the street and she can come be with my kids. And I'm going to call these other people. And we live in New York City where I've got a great number of hospitals that can take care of me. So sometimes actually planning for that what if settled her and gave her a plan and helped her to know that she would have others, she would have resources, and she would have options. And then what's left? So if that were to happen, then what? What's left? Okay, well, what's left is that I would be with my friends. I would be with the people that care about me. I would heal. I would I would begin to talk about what matters to me as my family, my friends, the hobbies and the things that I love. So sometimes if we take that and we look at the rest of the picture, as opposed to just zero focusing on that worry, it can be helpful. Talking through a fear and creating a strategy can settle it. Shifting your focus kind of to that worst case scenario place can sometimes illuminate the disparity between that fear-based place and the reality of right now, right? And it can refocus your attention and allow, so when we do those things like what is or what else, it refocuses your attention. It may not completely dismiss the worry. It may be unrealistic to think that you could, but it can help you to allow that to kind of hang out in the background while you can refocus your attention on what's right in front of you today. Strategy number 2. This is kind of more in the emotional realm. So let it be. That sounds so easy, doesn't it? But thought challenging, all that we just did in the first those two other slides, is healthy, and it is evidence-based. It's effective, right? It's kind of in the lane of what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, which is proven to be helpful and successful for many people dealing with depression and anxiety. But sometimes your worry voice will always ensnare you into a debate, right? Do you know what I mean? So that expelling the thought, like, okay, what's right in front of me? It's kind of like, I'm going to put my attention to what's in front of me right now, or debating the worry. Okay, but I am feeling healthier. My scan was okay. Sometimes debating a worry into submission or expelling the thought, it may not always work long-term. So if you are someone that has ever felt caught in what I call the yes, but loop, yes, but, that's a signal to you. I want you to right now recognize that when you hear yes, but, that's like a flashing light. And that at that point, it's almost less about what the worry is and more about the fact that you're worrying, that you're caught, that you're in that spin. And so the first thing is can you see it? Can you recognize it? Can you notice it? There it is. There, I'm in that worry loop. And how do you walk away from the fight? What does that mean? How do I do that? So let that feeling on in. Just let it come. Because sometimes when we're kind of in that space, we're saying, I don't need to worry. I don't need to be scared. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm okay. Yes, but. Let that feeling in. This feeling that I have sitting in here is worry, but it could also be fear. Just give that feeling your full attention. We don't like to do that. We kind of want to fight it. We want to keep it out. But the more we do that, it kind of gets louder and more intense. Am I right? So sometimes we kind of just have to let down the reins and let the feeling in and give it all of our attention. When you do that, can you begin to pay attention to what you're thinking behind it? So what are all those thoughts? I call it the thought waterfall. The thought waterfall, what's going on? This might be a time to journal. This might be a time to like sob and cry to a good friend. How do you get all of that thought waterfall out and let that fully have that tension and that feeling fully have your attention? Name it. A lot of the work, this might sound so simple, but a lot of the work in my office with people is really, really encouraging them to get better and better at naming their feelings. Sounds so simple, right? Sounds so elementary school, but we don't do it. We kind of let our feelings sometimes, especially when we're stressed, drive the bus. And it drives us to do something to protect ourselves or to problem solve or to kind of communicate and assert our needs, whatever it is. But if we can just for one moment, just stop, pause, breathe, and just name what we're feeling. That's fear. It makes me mad, it makes me angry. I am feeling so uncertain right now. I don't even know how to begin to plan. Sadness, worry, loneliness. Loneliness is big. So how we can just name the feeling. I'll tell you a little science behind this, just not to get too academic, but our limbic system back here is the oldest part of our brain. It is the part of our brain that gets activated and reactive when we feel stress. Goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? To kind of keep us safe. And it's effective but it's not always sophisticated enough to know what stressors are real and what stressors are in our head or that we're telling ourselves. So when you do the work of naming a feeling, you're immediately connecting. Here we are back here in the limbic system, feeling all of this fear. And then we name it. And that engages our prefrontal cortex, which is where language centers are. And that prefrontal cortex begins to light up when we name it. And that's where impulse control and emotional regulation and judgment all live. So just that second of naming the feeling gives you a little bit of space where you can get in there and you can maneuver and you can respond, not react. You can drive the bus and make choices that are healthy and productive and meaningful to you, as opposed to letting those feelings just take you on a trip. So name the feeling. So here we are letting it be. And I said, let the feeling in, step one. And then I want you to begin to name it. Name it like a visitor. In fact, I say, greet your feeling like a visitor. This is when I talk a lot about the worst dinner party ever, right? That we can just let those feelings come in, let them sit at the table, get to know them, say, oh, anger, it looks like you're going to be walking alongside me today. It's a little bit of acceptance, and it helps us to get back to our present as opposed to fighting it. So your fear and your worry may not, and sadness, loneliness, any of these big feelings that feel a bit uncomfortable, they may not completely go away. That might be unrealistic. I have people, I just started work with a client, smart gal, smart cookie. And she is post-treatment cancer. And she is coming to me and saying, I am feeling consumed by my fear of thinking about reoccurrence. And I want it to go away. And we talked for a full hour, and we talked about where that fear is showing up for her and how she's feeling stressed and what she's doing that's helping her, and many, many different things. At the end of our session, I said, tell me, what are you hoping for? What are you hoping for in our time together? Like, why did you call? And what would tell you that our time is working? And she said, it would be really great if I just didn't feel that anymore. And I said, that does sound like that would be great. And I can imagine that that is exactly what you want. I would want that too. I'm not sure that that's going to be possible, however. So what I'm wondering if we can maybe just think about this a bit differently, if you'd be open, that that feeling may not completely go away, but maybe through our work together, you can form a different relationship with that feeling, so that when that feeling comes in the door, or knocks and comes into the worst dinner party ever, comes in, that it doesn't just freeze and hijack you in the way it's doing right now, and is as intrusive or cause those thoughts to be as ruminating, but that you can begin to maneuver around and work with that feeling, even if it's kind of hanging in the background. Name it and claim it. So that's kind of back to like just letting the feeling in. Just name it and claim it. Don't fight it. Don't wrestle with it. I already talked about, it gives you a little distance so you can respond and not react. And that really this work is mindfulness. It's becoming mindful of what's going on, that habit of checking in with yourself. And that when we do that, we're building muscles. We're building a tolerance for uncomfortable feelings. I mean, maybe doesn't sound that great. Who wants to do that? But on the other hand, who wants to be hijacked?
A licensed clinical social worker who has spent her career working in oncology support.
An introduction of me again. And so when you build that tolerance, you can feel that ability to care for yourself in different ways. Take the hit of the feeling, greet it like a visitor. And when you begin to learn to calm yourself and to get grounded, you not only feel better, but you act smarter. Okay. Strategy 3. Now we're going to move into your body. All right. So much of our worry, fear, anxiety, uncertainty, heaviness is all in our head, right? And then it swarms into our heart and our emotion. And a cancer diagnosis can also, just the medical piece of this, really cause you to be quite detached from your body, right? I mean, you've had to kind of let so many things happen, testing and chemo and so many different surgery, so many different things. So how do you ground yourself back to the here and now, that you are safe? Use your 5 senses. So I always tell people, when you're beginning to feel flooded with an emotion, how do you use your 5 senses to kind of get you back into right now? So 5 things you can see, hear, smell, touch, taste. That works a lot for people when they're sleeping and they wake up and they're up in the middle of the night. How can you feel the weight of the bed, the weight of you on the bed, the mattress underneath you, the covers on top, the temperature of the air on your skin? Can you listen outside? What do you hear outside? And sometimes when we do that, we turn the flashlight of our attention. So I like to think about attention, and I talk to children about this in this way. Think of your attention as a flashlight. And when our flashlight, i.e. our attention, is on a worry, that's all that we're thinking about. That's like the spotlight's on that one thing. So when can you think about, how do I maneuver that flashlight so I can pay attention to my body and in some way let that ground and calm me, right? break time into manageable chunks. So I've told people before when they're going through a hard time, waiting for information, waiting for news, the days leading into a scan, you know what, right now, just do one day, maybe just do wake up and get to lunch. That's it. Just think about getting to lunch. And then after lunch, just get home at the end of your day and then get to bed. Just break your time and give yourself just that. And you'll grow that over time. Sort your thoughts into past, present, and future. Many of my clients have been doing this throughout quarantine and COVID-19, when there's so much uncertainty about this, in addition to cancer. How do you begin to pay attention to what the content of what you're thinking, and maybe say to yourself, okay, you know what, Christmas, that, I don't know, or the holidays, or whatever it might be, our graduation, our family get together, that matters to me a great deal. I can tell it's important. It's emotional. There are other people that are waiting here for me too. Right now, in this exact right now, I don't know, and I'm feeling really uncertain about it, but I know that that thought is a future thought. And I'm going to leave that to the efficacy of my future self. You know what I mean? So I'm going to take that and I'm just going to leave it to my future self. I have a client that's waiting to hear, is waiting to get pregnant. She's post-treatment. She so desperately wants to have a baby. Her doctors want her to wait until she's been a number of years post-treatment. And that's so hard for her. And so we're really bucketing thoughts, into that's a future thought, that's a past thought, that's a present thought. In some ways, in doing that, it kind of releases you of those so that you can work on what's right in front of you. Give yourself permission to delegate future-oriented thoughts to your future self. Strategy 4, Control-Alt-Delete. So this is one that can work too when you need to find an anchor outside of your worry. Sometimes we can be talking, this goes a lot for maybe COVID-19, maybe the election, maybe an upcoming scan, something that is just so dominating in what's in front of you right now. And then we just spend more time talking about it. And then that fuels it more. And it can be really helpful to catch that we're doing that. We're talking again and incessantly about the one thing that might be stirring us up a little bit. And we need to recognize, oh, I need to parachute out of this for a bit. Go outside, start a creative activity, cooking, building, writing, do something with your body, be physical, connect with others, turn on music, humor. You might all have different things that you can do to kind of catch and control. I call it Control-Alt-Delete. I need to Control-Alt-Delete. You know how you do that on a computer when it's like frozen and not working? I need to stop, break this freeze, and get out of it. Some other strategies that I kind of think are Control-Alt-Delete. They work for different people. It's kind of a whole menu of ideas to think about. Thought delay. So I have a particular client of mine who works a lot. She does this thought delay. She's working at work and she has to maintain a professional, she has to be professional. And that sometimes her diagnosis will kind of well up within her and feel really overwhelming and sad and uncertain. And there's a lot of emotion there. And she will name it. Okay. So she does that work of naming. Good. And then she says, you know what? I'm going to schedule you for like 6 o'clock. I cannot do this right now. I'm at work. I have got stuff to do. I've got a workload. I've got projects. I've got people that I've got to report to. I cannot. I hear you, I see you, I don't want to minimize you, feelings, thoughts, but I'm going to schedule you for later. I'm going to schedule you for tonight at 6 o'clock. And when I get to 6 o'clock, I'm going to give you all of my attention. More often than not, by the time you get to later, the feeling has changed a bit and it might be a little easier to hold and to comfort and to deal with at that time. But if you find that you're in maybe a social gathering and something hits, can you tell yourself, okay, I see you and I feel you and you're important. You're talking to the feeling and I'm going to schedule you for later. Mock the feeling. I do this one all the time. Glimpse into a therapist coping mechanism. I mock the feeling all the time and particularly do it with my children. Like when I'm beginning to feel frustrated or impatient, I kind of sing it a little bit and act kind of silly with my feeling. I feel it. I know it's there, but I'm like, I'm beginning to lose my patience. I'm feeling really frustrated. That sounds crazy and silly, but it takes the steam out. It takes the air out. It's naming it. It's recognizing what's going on in me. And it's kind of mocking the feeling a little bit, which turns the volume down. So you might think I'm totally nuts. You might also want to give it a try, but like mocking the feeling or kind of just a little bit playing with it can sometimes turn the volume, turn the intensity down. And then face the bully in your mind. So sometimes that fear or that persistent, intrusive thought just keeps coming, and how you can say that, you know what, I see you, here you are again. What do you have for me today? You know, I know you keep trying to scare me. You keep trying to make me feel like I can't do this. I got to go to work today. I am feeling okay. I can own my hair, my head, my hair. What I look like now. Don't get in my way. So kind of taking that bully thought and tying it up in the corner, making it third person and putting it aside so that you can go out and be you. So that's in some ways also kind of making it, depersonalizing it or making it third person. Your perspective as a survivor, as a person, works in two ways. I like to call this zoom in, zoom out. I said that way before we were all on Zoom constantly. But as you begin to listen closely to yourself, zoom, it can be helpful at times when you're feeling a lot of emotion to zoom way on out, right? And to see the big giant picture. And in that big giant picture, this moment can seem smaller. This moment can seem doable. This moment you can notice that you're surrounded and that there's a lot available to you, right? And then sometimes that feels overwhelming and scary and we don't know how to do that. The future is hard to think about. Post-treatment, it's hard to set goals. It's hard to see beyond a certain horizon, right? And so then we need to zoom way in to this day, this moment, this task, right? So zooming out that big picture, your values, your North Star, how you're doing this life, how you're showing up, and then zoom in sometimes this day, this moment, this hour. And there's waves. Wouldn't you say that's the case? There's waves to how we feel, waves of understanding and then waves of uncertainty. So the way you feel today may change. See, I'm not sure. From day to day. And, you know, I say to my clients all the time, sometimes the best thing you can do with a crappy day is just go to bed. Just go to bed. Just let's go to bed and trust that things continue to change and that there's a great possibility that when you wake up tomorrow, it feels a little different. Listen closely and work to learn about your response. So again, we can read a lot generally about coping, generally about cancer survivorship, but you have to do this work of really knowing, how is this showing up for me? And what is it that's working or not working? And how do I care for myself in very personal and unique ways? Ignoring needs and dismissing hard feelings can sometimes intensify the distress. So back to that place when we kind of are cognitively challenging and it's just so big and we let the feeling in, that there can be some real benefit of just letting the feeling in, owning it, name it and claim it. And talking with others can help you to kind of work through your uncertainties in a natural way. People are always like, what do you do in therapy? Like, I've never been there. Like, what can I expect? And sometimes just therapy is the ability to talk it through and organically kind of untangle the knot together with somebody else. And cultivate a range of coping behaviors. When I ask people how they cope, they often tell me similar things. I'm like, does that work for you at 2 a.m? So do you have things that can work for you at 2 a.m, things that can work for you when you're in the middle of a boardroom or at work, and then things that can work for you on a beautiful day when you can get outside, and things that can work for you on a day when there's a blizzard and a rainstorm. So like, what are all the different ways you can care for yourself? Finally, give yourself grace and time. So I know, and I'm sure you're discovering that a cancer diagnosis changes you. It does. And it just takes time to understand how. So that's all I have in this, but I know we've got a little bit of time for questions. And so tell me what's come up for all of you as I've been talking, and feel free to keep putting those in there.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just going to get people's questions. I just want to thank you again so much, Julie, for that wonderfully informative, practical, really helpful presentation. I took a ton of notes.
Good.
We do have a question here about how stress shows up for us. If we're not sure if we're a thinker or a feeler, how do we determine that?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to the fact that you're both, right? You're both things. So it's, you know, we think and we feel. So I would just begin to pay attention to the relationship between what you're thinking. So gosh, when I keep thinking about this, what is that line of thinking making me feel? And then on the kind of, if we make that a line with an arrow on both ends, if you're recognizing, gosh, I am feeling not quite myself today, I'm feeling off. I'm feeling antsy, restless, or I'm feeling lonely. Or what is it that I'm thinking about that's going alongside that feeling? So just begin to pay attention for yourself to kind of the connection between the two.
Great. Thank you so much. And I encourage people, we have just a couple of minutes more. If you have any other questions you want to pop into the Q&A, while we let you type things. I have heard several, well, over the years, lots of people commenting on sort of this culture of cancer and survivorship, that we need to be warriors and climb a mountain after treatment and do these extraordinary things. And do you have any comments on how, in those moments where you don't feel like a warrior, how we be kind to ourselves, or how we address those feelings?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, here's the thing is that this goes back to the personal piece, right? Because I do have certain survivors that I work with who that sense of warrior and fight and strong and battle, all of that analogy and metaphor really works for them. And that kind of gears them up and helps them, you know, be ready to kind of face the day. And then other people really struggle with that because it can feel like pressure and guilt and failure. You know, I think sometimes people are like, am I doing cancer wrong? I don't feel this way. I don't want to do every walk. I don't want to put ribbons on things. That's not who I am. I don't want to own that. And that can feel like a sense of pressure. So I think for you, it's kind of beginning to recognize compassion, self-compassion. And I know I believe, I hope that others heard the talk earlier today. I think you had a talk on self-compassion. That is life work. I talk about self-compassion every session, every day with my clients, and how we really begin to be kind to ourselves and watch the language that we're using with ourselves. So when that warrior thing feels too much and you feel like you're failing it or falling short, how might you find other words to say to yourself, you know what, I'm doing the best I can. This is really hard. This is hard. No wonder I feel uncomfortable. No wonder I feel upset, lonely, stressed. Just accept that place of acceptance and kindness.
Thank you. We have another question saying, and we'll just go a few minutes over since we got started late. If people want to stay during their break. Post-treatment, I have a comment here that everyone thinks life has gone back to normal, but it hasn't really. How do you go back to your quote unquote normal life?
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying, you know, I don't know that you will completely go back to your normal life. There will probably be things that will always feel and be a bit different. And that mostly might be your perspective or the way in which you see things. And so in that, there's grief and there's sadness and there's, you know, bargaining with, I don't want it to be this way, and anger and frustration. And yet at the same time, there are parts of you that have not changed and that are probably a through line and still there. And how you begin to find that and bring it forward, how you begin to find meaning. I know that that's a tough conversation. I don't know if you've seen, look at this on my desk. I have a continuing education, the 6th stage of grief. They're redoing the whole grief thing. They've even talked to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about this, that there is a 6th stage of grief called meaning making and figuring out what is this? What has changed in me and how do I understand that? And we know that when you can begin to think about that, it does facilitate adjustment. So I want you to feel like you go back to normal. I also want you to begin to look at where you are right now.
Great. Thank you. We'll try to squeeze in 1 or 2 more. In regard to hot topic triggers, if we know that there's a person that definitely creates a trigger for us, or certainly interactions that are triggers, is there a way to respond directly to a person? Is it best to let it go or avoid it? Do you have thoughts on that?
I think there's probably not one answer, right? You kind of got to feel it for yourself. And also what you feel confident in, what you feel comfortable for yourself, because we all might have different levels of comfort in being, you know, putting down a limit or saying something direct, asserting ourselves to others. For some people that might be too much, and other people that's very easy for them to do. But I do think that sometimes we have to be able to be direct and put a stop sign in front of people that are constantly kind of saying the wrong thing or intruding in ways that we don't like. And so you might begin to rehearse things that could work for you, things that I've worked with clients before on. You know what, normally it's really easy for me to talk about my diagnosis. Today, I want to focus on other things. That is very clear that we are not talking about this today. The other thing is that when you get with those people, you might unfortunately have a little bit of more of a role of directing the line of the conversation. If you don't want it to go in certain places, how do you direct where it's going? And that might be throwing the spotlight back on the other person. Oh, I heard you just went on a vacation. Tell me more. No, nobody's been on a vacation. But I've heard that, you've just been here. Tell me more about that. Or your son just was playing, a sports team. Did they win? What's going on there? So how can you know the weather, something, who knows? Throw it back on the other person. I would say one other little piece about that when you're with other people that stir up and trigger us. If you are savvy and you are able to maneuver that conversation, stop it, redirect it, walk away, whatever you're able to do to kind of close that down, you still likely feel the stress of that in your body, right? I mean, I've been there and I can walk away from a thing and I get in my car and I'm like, and I'm still kind of buzzy, right? So then you've still got work to do. And that work is still kind of finding your way back to calm, finding your way back to center, finding where else you feel gratitude and appreciated and grounded. So don't just stop the conversation and think you're done. You might still need to care for your body and care for yourself after that moment's over.
Great. Thank you so much. I was going to try to squeeze in one more, but I think we need to let people go for their break. I do want to just reiterate again that if we didn't get to your question, please do feel free to always call our helpline and continue to stay in touch with us. And we can also connect you with professionals like Julie. And Julie, thank you again so much. That was incredible. And lots of comments in the box just thanking you for your warmth and this feeling like a therapy session for all of us.
Good. Well, I'm glad that everybody got something out of it. Keep doing this hard work. It's so important. It's life work.
Wonderful. So we just have a 5-minute break for you all. If you're still with us, take a quick break and we'll join if you go back to the main page, you can join your second breakout session at 2:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As she said, let's enjoy a 5-minute break. This break is sponsored by Nurse Registry. Thank you. We'll see you in 5,